Hi everyone, and welcome to Lobo and Bobo's gaming channel. This is Gradius ReBirth, released in 2009 for the Nintendo Wii. If you're a Gradius fan, good for you. If you're not, this game is a good place to start. It retains lots of the old school Gradius features, but isn't as brutally difficult as some of the previous Gradius games. That will of course depend on the difficulty setting you choose, and there are a few. In terms of graphics and music, this game feels like a mid-1980s arcade game, but perhaps not quite as rough around the edges. Yet none of that 2.5D stuff that's become quite common for shooters in the later years. This game is 2D sprites only, and it manages this graphical style beautifully. Moving on from the technobabble, if you've played a lot of other Gradius games, then you know what to expect. Now if you haven't, Gradius is a horizontal space shooter, or shmup as some people like to call them. A game genre that reached the peak of its popularity around the early to mid 1980s, but had lived on ever since. The Gradius series is one of the first and the most well known, which isn't really surprising given the quality of the earlier games. So if you're interested in this particular bit of gaming history, Gradius is worth your time. And you can't really go wrong with Gradius if you're simply looking for a good 2D shooter. ReBirth has got everything that you look for in a Gradius game. Granted, there are better entries in the Gradius series, but these tend to be more technical and more difficult to get into. What sets ReBirth apart from the other games is its relatively short length. It's only got 5 levels, and also not too many customization options for your ship. Now if you're looking for any kind of multiplayer, you can forget it. This is a solo mission. Not that you'll have any time to think about that while you're playing this game, because as you can see, it's quite busy, and it gets even more busy at the tougher difficulty levels. A pleasant surprise about ReBirth is how it's managed to squeeze a little bit more out of the old concept, as you can see right now. There is some clever level design going on right here. And there are sections of the game that you'll play in a way that you've never played a Gradius game before. This prevents the game from being a pure rehash of what you've already tried in previous Gradius games, while retaining a lot of the familiar features. It should be said though that 5 levels feels a little bit short for a Gradius game, and once you finish the game for the first time, you might feel as I did, a little bit surprised and perhaps a little bit disappointed. Gradius ReBirth is not a full game though. It's a Wiiware download, and what's being offered is really good. There is some replay value here, in particular if you're a long time fan of Gradius. The game changes slightly with each loop, and after you complete the game for the first time, a new ship is unlocked. This doesn't drastically alter the gameplay in any way, but the way it's executed is quite clever, and quite a treat for those people who have played Gradius for a long time and might recognise elements from the Gradius games that were released on the MSX home computer way back when. Now I don't know what the chances are that these Stone Age gamers are playing Gradius ReBirth on the Wii or the Wii U as I am doing, which you can do if you like, but these subtle nods to obscure gaming history are in a way a reward in and of themselves, simply because it's something you don't see every day, and that is something you appreciate if you're a Gradius fan and you enjoy this antiquated form of gaming. So I consider Gradius ReBirth to be a game that's primarily for either the hardcore fan or the complete newcomer. If you simply want more Gradius, then you'll find it here. If you've never tried Gradius before and you want to see if it's for you, then you'll know after playing this game. It's a little bit surprising that the game didn't see release beyond the single platform. It's more than likely that it would sell better on Xbox and PlayStation than it has done on the Wii. The last Gradius game released for a Nintendo console before this was Gradius 3, which was a launch title for the Super Nintendo, and that was in the early 90s. That's if you're not counting Gradius Galaxies for the Game Boy Advance, which I'm not. I don't like it. It's lazy. And the word ReBirth in the game's title is a little bit misleading. This feels a bit more like a tribute than a rebirth, and if you know Japanese, then you know that there's already a ReBirth Gradius game, namely number 4. All that being said, This is a good Gradius game, both in terms of design and gameplay, and it's really satisfying to play through, whether you do it out of nostalgia or to explore. Today, many people think of the Wii as a shovelware system, but what they're forgetting is that there are a lot of old school games available on the Wii through the Virtual Console, and it's a really good console for shoot 'em ups. There are loads of them available on there for past systems from Nintendo, Sega and Neo Geo and arcade and others. Today you can buy a pre-owned Wii console for less than the price of a new game for a modern system like PS4 or Xbox One. With all of the retro games available on the Wii's Virtual Console, I think that's definitely worth it. And then there's Gradius ReBirth, made to be retro, but not in the cheap and overdone way that you see in a lot of today's indie games. So you can say that ReBirth was a bit ahead of its time in that way, and quite unique in the sense that I don't think Konami will try to do anything like this ever again. So I'm not in any doubt whatsoever. I think this is a game that you should buy, and this is a game that you should play. It's a very fitting send-off for Gradius in its traditional form, and it's also a very fitting introduction for anyone who hasn't played Gradius before. And that's really all I've got to say about that. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I do hope you give this game a chance because it's really good. So thank you everyone, bye bye.